A boundless treasure. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's life was an ever-abundant treasure, enriching anyone who had a connection with him. I was with His Holiness for more than 2 decades, receiving his teachings and accompanying him for various Dharma activities. Although I am neither daring nor able to fathom his wisdom and spiritual accomplishment, I had many close glimpses of his integrity, generosity, great impartiality, and pure kindness. And it is not an exaggeration to say that it will be my lifetime endeavor just to learn from him how to be a good person. When I first arrived at the Larung Buddhist Institute, I had only 45 Chinese yuan, or less than $5. Without adequate financial means to support my living there, I intended only to have a private audience with His Holiness, and did not expect to stay long. With his penetrating gaze, however, His Holiness seemed to know my thoughts during our first meeting. He invited me to stay on and had a small cabin with all the necessities arranged for me. Although His Holiness did not have much at the time, he often offered what he had to the needy without being asked. Busy teaching an ever-increasing number of students throughout the day, he was still attentive and thoughtful. As a good observer, he noticed every small detail of his students and gave them timely support, though seemingly in a manner casual and cursory. Poor students like me not only benefited from his teachings, but also enjoyed his immense generosity and warmth. His Holiness was a man of great courage and determination. If something had to be done for a good cause, he would do it regardless of the obstacles. Even if he was treated unfairly, he would never blame anybody, either in front of the person or behind his back. In 1985, His Holiness promoted a comprehensive purification and ethics reform in Tibetan monasteries as a corrective to breaches of vows and commitments by some monks and nuns. Although many monasteries welcomed and supported the movement, it also led to tensions and conflict with certain groups of people who had vested interests. While disputes and troubles ensued in the following 10 years, His Holiness never complained, blamed, or criticized anybody, nor did he argue with anyone or try to defend himself. He merely pressed on with what he believed to be the right thing to do. Only on one occasion, His Holiness said calmly, "If we do not change the status quo of monastic society in Tibet, and leave it uncontrolled without re-establishing monastic discipline, the future of Buddhism in Tibet will be doomed. For the sake of the favorable dissemination of the teachings, I will not give up even at the cost of my own life, let alone some pointless slander." In my memory, His Holiness was exceptionally gentle and courteous with people. He joked a lot, but even when he teased or poked fun at others, they could still sense his sincere respect for them. Conscious of others' sensibilities, His Holiness would never do or say anything that might hurt others. He acted this way out of politeness and graciousness, which was an inherent part of his virtues. In his presence, the most obscure person would see their own preciousness, and the most desperate person would find hope. This is, I suppose, what majesty truly means in this world. Perceptive of the shortcomings of his students, His Holiness nonetheless never commented on them if they were minor. He was a tolerant teacher, and sensitive to others' self-esteem. If on occasion he had to criticize a particular student, he would do it in a subtle and gentle way. Still, he would quickly feel sorry and try to comfort them with kind words. Although His Holiness was lenient in many ways, Larung adopts rigorous ethical standards and monastic discipline to facilitate residents' Buddhist study and practice. Occasionally, residents who violated vows and commitments were penalized or even expelled. In these situations, His Holiness would always shed tears, because this was the last thing he wished to see and hear. And if a steward wanted to report such an incident to him in detail, he would stop him. At Larung, seating for His Holiness's teaching sessions followed the rule of first come, first served. The front rows were generally taken by students who arrived earliest. Even a high-status tulku had no choice but to take a back seat if he arrived late. Visitors and guest students often marvelled at this practice of impartiality, which, however, was a mere reflection of His Holiness's personality. In his world, there were no real differences between people. If there was any difference at all, it was that he usually treated poor or weak students preferentially to show his encouragement to them. His Holiness lost his father at age 9. His own tragic childhood had helped him to understand other people's insecurity and desolation in dire situations. Once, when he was very young, he was bullied and beaten by some kids and ran home in a torrential downpour. At night, while his soaking clothes caused him to shiver, he thought, "My dear father has left me so early in such a miserable world." Full of sadness, he slowly fell asleep. Then he dreamed about Padmasambhava, radiant in gold. Standing in front of him, Guru Rinpoche smiled and said to him, "Do not be sad, my child, and do not detest this world. When you grow up, you will help many others so that their lives will become meaningful." When he woke up in the morning, he found that all his sorrow and resentment had vanished. His own misery as an orphan made his heart bigger and warmer, and he was always eager to help and protect others. A man of immense compassion, he was like an inexhaustible treasure open to anybody in need and touching the lives of millions. His Holiness often said that being a good person is the foundation of Buddhist practice, as virtues are essential to spiritual development. Otherwise, spiritual practice is like a quixotic project of building mansions in the sky. Model conduct was the only criterion that a Sangha applied to determine whether to accept a student or not. Those with ethical lapses had to learn how to be a good person before starting their Buddhist study under him. In our world, conventional ethical norms can vary. In the 7th century, the Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo issued a code of conduct consisting of 16 specific commitments that applied to Tibetans in general. This code has become a well-accepted ethical guideline in Tibet and has been followed closely by Tibetans for more than 1,000 years. For Tibetans, to be a good person boils down to one thing: to be kind. Kindness is the innermost core of a Buddhist. In modern society, people want to be smart, competent, rich, and powerful, free to do whatever they desire. However, few want to be kind, for being kind seems to imply softness that makes one vulnerable. It is true that no one in this world welcomes pain and suffering, but being hard-hearted does not spare us from such things. It is for this reason that Buddhist practitioners choose to remain gentle and open in any circumstances. As Geshe Langri Thangpa's 8 verses on training the mind states, "I will take defeat and misery upon myself, and give the victory and joy to others." Always considerate and caring, a kind person often endures loss and pain willingly, provided it makes others happy. Kindness is the source of worldly and spiritual merit. In times past, when practitioners of the Kadampa school met, they would greet each other with words like, "Have you been kind lately?" They would ask when meeting in the morning, "Were you kind in your dreams last night?" And they would bid each other farewell by saying, "I hope that you keep kindness in your heart." When Atisha once had an ache in one of his hands, he placed it in Dromtönpa's arms and said, "Since you have a kind heart, please bless my hand." Being kind entails not harming others intentionally, and a kind person will always try to avoid causing others pain. Broadly speaking, not to harm means not to bring others troubles and afflictions. If certain words may displease others, they should not be said. If certain acts may trouble others, they should not be done. Despite good intentions, a kind person may sometimes still hurt others. Therefore, it is necessary for us to think twice before doing something. If our intent is good, and we have tried our best, our act can still allow us to gather merit, even if the result is less than satisfactory. Being kind also means being compassionate toward all beings, wishing that all of them are happy and free of suffering and rejoicing in others' virtuous acts. If we see others do negative things or encounter misfortune and suffering, we should not just stand by and do nothing or rejoice in others' misery. Rather, we should do our best to prevent others from acting wrongly and help those who are experiencing difficulty. Dromtönpa's Vajra brother, Butopa, never got angry. Whenever he met someone, he would greet them by saying, "I hope all is well with you." A kind person will not harm animals while talking about his love for humans, because his loving kindness is extended equally to all beings. His Holiness was always sad to see animals suffering or being slaughtered, and he would use every means to save them. Inspired by His Holiness, his students are active in animal release that brings freedom, joy, and fearlessness to animals that are being saved, while at the same time instilling compassion, warmth, and confidence in those who help the release. Kindness goes hand in hand with integrity. Kind people may not always be smart or able, but they are certainly people of decency. Although one may be clumsy and not know how to please others, they will be honest. They will respect their teacher and fellow practitioners, and their actions will not conflict with the words of their teacher. From either a secular or spiritual perspective, a kind heart is the cradle of peace and joy. Tsongkhapa once remarked that a kind person will live happily in both this and future lives. Kindness will also bring a person closer to liberation if they are resolute and steady in their practice. If we nurture kindness in ourselves, every one of us can be a boundless treasure, just as His Holiness has shown.